Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Thank you very much, young man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Obviously, I know we've been chatting for a couple of weeks. I was speaking to Adam Gold, who's actually the next episode coming out, and he spoke very highly of you. He said about the great work that you guys are doing at the college. He mentioned a few things, but I think the first thing we should start with is if you could just tell us where you grew up and how you got into welding.
Okay. Yeah, no problem at all. It's not the traditional route, I can tell you that. So it might make interesting listening. Okay. Um, well, I was born in Birmingham. I stayed there just for 1 year until my parents moved up to a small Welsh village in the middle of
Oh,
Wales. Nice. Yeah, yeah, I was brought up, yeah, in this lovely little Welsh village. We were the first English family to ever move there, which, as you can imagine, had its issues.
yeah, I can imagine.
But eventually, all things settled down. I grew up there. Had what I describe as an idyllic childhood. Wonderful, wonderful place. I ask my parents sometimes. I say, "What was I like as a teenager? Growing up at all? Did it ever cause any trouble or anything like most teenagers?" And they said, we didn't have anywhere to play up, if you know what I mean. Nowhere to
Yeah.
rebel because it was just in the middle of nowhere. Lovely little village. Did the usual, lovely primary school. Learned how to shadow Cymraeg.
Yeah.
Um, went to high school. As ever, as most people, I don't know if you're the same, but didn't put everything into high school. The various other things that were of interest in high school. Education wasn't really one of them. But left there, weirdly started going to college and was just about to get an apprenticeship as a mechanic, believe it or not, in the next village. So I thought that was my future. Weirdly, that was the path I was on, and love football. Always played football. I've only recently stopped playing, and damaged my wrist playing football one night. Well, broke it, in fact, and that kind of ruined my apprenticeship. So it didn't work out that well. So then I kind of moved into being a production worker, press operator actually in various factories around where I lived. So I got to the age of about 22, 23, and seen people welding and all that. And I always thought, I don't know, that's probably out of reach for me. That's looks like a very complicated affair. But ultimately, I ended up working in this company. It doesn't exist anymore. They used to make pressure vessels. You familiar with pressure vessels at all? Have you ever worked on them, Chris? Or...
Yeah, we did. My company that I did my apprenticeship with was in the oil and gas industry, so we did a lot of pressure vessels and that type of thing.
Wow. Oh, so you're familiar with the dished ends on the... Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
okay. Well, my first experience I was working on the knocking the dished ends into the pressure vessels. And I remember one morning I'd gone in for overtime. I was knackered, I was trying to knock this dished end in with the hammer, and it bounced out, landed on my foot, really hurt. And this was 6 a.m. I was knackered, sweating. My foot was killing, and I thought, I've got to do something. I can't keep doing this forever. So I looked over a few bays and see the lads welding there, and I thought, you know what, that looks really cool. And it looks like easier work than this, and it looks like you don't hurt yourself like this. I want to have a go at that. So I had a word with the bosses, and they eased me into. They put me on the sub-arc welder, which was a
Yeah.
seam welder, and I enjoyed that then because I began to learn just the basics of what actually happened underneath that flux. What was actually going on. So gradually learned a little bit and got more interested. I thought, I don't know, I think I want to have a go at proper welding. So I enrolled on, actually the company paid for the first course I went on. So at Shrewsbury College, level one introduction to welding, which is what I teach now, weirdly. Um, Went on there with a tutor, Dave Morris, great tutor, really, really cool dude. And that was my first experience of the usual 5 test pieces. And I thought, yeah, this is all right. I wasn't natural. I'm definitely not a natural, but I progressed. Went back, had a little play at the factory, a little bit ago welding, and then I thought, right, I have to take it serious. I went back and did the level two. And so then I thought I was a welder then, see.
Yeah.
So I started applying for jobs then, and had an application for a local factory as a MIG welder. I went from a weld test. which I was petrified about. The weld test, you hear, everybody talking about the weld, the first weld test you go on, my God, I'd psyched myself up for it. Practiced about 19,000 T-fillets beforehand,
Yeah.
It was really weird. It's almost like almost a letdown, really, because I went for the application, went to the place, started welding, doing the T-fillet, and I was about 4 seconds into doing it, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Yeah, that's fine, mate." It was like a big relief. My God,
That
really?
was
Is it
it.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that it? People, it is. I started working at the factory, and I was there for about 13 years, and I was a MIG welder. We welded security covers for reservoirs and what have you. And I had the option to be a fabricator, but I don't know. I don't think it was a lack of ambition. I was just happy doing my MIG welding. It was great. It was a great life. At the time, I mean, we all progress through our lives, don't we? But at the time, it was nice to clock on, do your job. I was smiling. You know what I mean?
Know
Yeah, clock
exactly
off,
what you mean. Yeah.
and not think about a thing until the next day. It was great. Um,
Yeah.
but
Sort of
anyway, go on.
on that, I would kind of say the same with me. I spent pretty much all of my 20s welding, and I never really wanted to do anything else because,
Yeah,
as you said,
yeah,
comfortable, easy life,
yes,
working in different places, working on different sites, welding, and, I always enjoyed it. It was never something that,
yeah,
going into work was never a drag for me most of the times, unless I was hungover
yes,
sometimes, probably.
yeah.
It's on a Friday morning or whatever it was, when being a poker on a
Yes.
Thursday night. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it was never, I never found, I was exactly the same as you. I never found welding boring. I
people in
always
suits and
enjoyed
doing it all their lives, and in another world, I could have been doing that as well. But yeah, it's hard to explain to people who don't know anything about welding, about it. It's hard to put into words what it is you enjoy, what you're doing. You enjoy watching your weld, what you produce, the pride in when you've
Yeah,
produced
exactly.
yeah, you watch it go out your bay, you think, I'm proud of that, and then secretly you compare yours to, the guy next door.
Yeah, you always have that one welder who comes over and sticks his head down to have a look at what the
Oh,
boot looks like, or would lean on the pipe to see if, how long ago you finished welding it, if it's still hot, or, you always
absolutely,
have those.
absolutely. With
But I
the
think
references
sort
to bird shit and stuff, yeah.
of Yeah, I think no, obviously you have the pressure of codings and X-rays and that type of thing, but there's no stress really. I never found it any stress, whereas sometimes my role now can be stressful if I'm trying to sort things or, trying to get you there. But welding was never stressful. Just put your head screen down,
Mm,
listen to a podcast or
that's
listening to a
it.
music, sometimes one headphone in,
Absolutely.
and I could stay there all day welding, no problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's strange actually because I used to wear one of those hoods, and I used to have my earbuds in, and I can say it now because I don't work there anymore. And
Yeah.
and it was nobody ever clicked that when they walked into my bay to talk to me, I'd always put my hand in my pocket to pause the podcast when I was listening.
Yeah.
Nobody ever clicked that. It's ever so strange.
The
But
the thing
yeah,
is,
go on.
it could be a long day otherwise, can't it? Because you can be under that head screen for, 6, 8 hours, and you have to
Mm.
have a little bit of stimulation.
Yes, there's only a certain amount of time that you can think of the wonders of life, what life's all about. You need some stimulation elsewhere sometimes, don't you?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So 14 years, is that what you said?
13,
13.
13-ish.
So that's a long time. How did you end up finishing there then?
Again, it was like a natural progression, really. I remember going home to my wife, it was my girlfriend then, and I said, I've got to do something different. I may have even said better. I don't know. So I've got to do something. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't know. Fabricating isn't the route for me. I don't know what is really interesting. So I had this dilemma for a couple of months, and whilst I realised that this probably wasn't the long term future for me, my enjoyment in my job kind of deteriorated a little bit, just slightly. It's interesting how things work out in life. It fascinates me, it really does. There's a friend of mine who worked for an employment agency, and we were chatting once, and we used to go out together. Actually, I was on the beer, and he said, "Have you ever thought about teaching welding?" I said, well, I remember being in college and thinking that looked like a fantastic job. But no, I hadn't. Why? And he said, well, there's a private company in Chester that's looking for someone. Do you want me to put your name forward? I said, yeah, go for it. But and again, I don't know if you can understand if you feel the same as I do. Once you've been in a place for that amount of time, you can become institutionalized. and almost thinking, my God, change. I mean, I'm not the biggest lover of change ever, but
Yeah.
even so, when you've been doing the same thing that long, you know. So again, same thing. He got me an interview with the chap, Nick Backstrom, great chap. Went there, and I'll never forget, never forget the way he described. He said, "Okay," he said, "I can weld a little bit, but can you teach me, how you would?" So we did our thing. We got in the welding bay, and I advised him what to do and encouraged him. And he said, he said, "You've got a different way of teaching, and I like it." It was great. I was really happy with that. But I had a question. I said, "Yeah, thanks for that. But what do you mean?" And he said, "You're very enthusiastic." Because I was very, giving him a lot of praise because what he's doing was great. It was right. Yeah, I got the job and I was there for a couple of years again. But again, I had that same feeling. This is great for a private company, but what else? What else? And
What's next?
yeah, that's it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, that's not. I haven't really got itchy feet, as they say. I haven't really, but I knew there was something else. And then I was looking, I think it was Indeed or whatever it was. This vacancy came up at Riverside College, and the advert insinuated that they were quite desperate for a welding tutor. And I thought, well, I joke about it, but I believe I could do anything. I believe anyone could do anything for that matter. I thought, why don't I apply? And I'll never forget that a relative of my wife's once said, if you can do, it's a good lesson for anyone listening this is who wants to, I don't know, change career or anything. If you can do 40% of what the job application asks for, of course they always ask for a lot, don't they? They always
Yeah,
ask for the
of
whole
course.
shebang, don't they? If you can do 40%, apply for it. So I did. And I went through the agency and I didn't hear anything back from the lady who was dealing with my CV for about a week. And I thought that's odd because they seemed quite desperate. I know my CV is pretty good. And so I phoned her up and said, all right, whatever it was, let's say her name was Cheryl. I said, all right, Cheryl, I haven't heard back from you. She said, yeah, well, I've looked at your CV, but there was nothing on there about teaching welding. I said, do you want to have another look? Was how I termed it, but I wanted to say something stronger. My
Yeah.
God, I said, do you want to have a look at, I don't know, look at page 2 or whatever it is. Why is well, it's what I've just been doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I said, have another look then, please. She said, oh yeah, I can see. Which annoyed me, did she? Oh yeah, I can see that you can teach. I said, yeah, that's yeah, that's right. It's what I do. So so she put me in touch with the boss, who's still my boss, and he asked me to come in and told me how desperate they were. But it just went from there. I remember, I'm quite. I like to think I'm quite an organised chap, and I don't generally like to throw myself into the deep end, but that's what happened. I was in right at the deep end. My goodness, I remember my first lesson there with I think some level ones, and I was quite nervous to say the least. But thank God there was a lovely bloke who'd been there a long time. He wasn't a welding tutor; he was a technician. He's,
Like a
he's
technician, yeah.
yeah, he was my best friend at the college, Rob, and he really settled me in lovely, told me what to do, what not to do. God, that was valuable. And if you don't mind me saying, it's kind of just gone from strength to strength there. What I will say, and I vowed I'd say this, try not to get too emotional about this, is obviously I'll take some credit for how things have progressed. I've got to take some because it's me, but the primary reason, in my opinion, is because of my manager, Andy James. He's been the most fantastic man. It's not just me who says this, the most fantastic manager I've ever had. And what I jokingly say is perhaps the bar hasn't been that high in some of the factories that I've worked.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You can't give
uh,
him too much, can you? But
no, it's a low bar. But yeah, and think yeah. So that's how it's gone since there.
the thing is as well, I think a lot of people don't leave bad jobs. A lot of people leave sort of bad management or bad job management because, if you're in a job with a good manager who you respect and, everything's working out, then you don't leave that job most of the time, do you? If you're happy and you feel fulfilled in your day-to-day role.
That is exactly right. I covered over it a little bit, but there was a little element of that is the reason why I left that factory as well. Only a small element, but you're so right, and I often think about that because you can chase the money, obviously, but I think as I've grown up and I've matured, I think that's another lesson again for anybody listening that it's not about the money. Money helps, obviously, money gives you choices. We know that, but it's not the be all and end all. That job satisfaction is worth everything. It's funny. I'll just say one more point on that. That it's not just me. We've got another technician there now. A lovely guy, Graham. He's been invaluable to us welding tutors. He's fantastic. But we're like our own echo chamber because he's come from factories as well. And it's all about, I know, twice a week we'll finish our lesson and we'll say the same thing. Isn't this life with this manager better, infinitely better than what we used to have? It's a very nice position, very fortunate position to be in, and I'm very grateful for it. But it's not just him. It's Riverside College in general. It's an interesting one because I hear stories from people I'm friends with on LinkedIn, about various other colleges, and they're all okay. Don't get me wrong, but Riverside does genuinely seem to be a cut above the rest for all sorts of things to enable you to grow in your career, to encourage you. Just there's a really friendly atmosphere there. It's lovely.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently at Riverside College then, 'cause I know I read a lot about the VR training, which isn't
Oh,
something that was there. I can see by your face you're probably gonna either explain to me a lot or bore me to death about VR
yeah,
training. But
both.
look, it's not something that was around when I was in college. I know I probably finished college maybe 9, 10 years ago, I think. No.
Mm,
So yeah, can you
mm.
tell us a little bit about that?
I can. It was around then, but obviously not utilised by employers or colleges. It's a really interesting one because when I first got there, I seen these machines. They were already there. The college have had them since 2016, I think, and I got there 2019. And I seen these virtual reality welders, and I thought, yeah,
What's
all
that all
right,
about? Yeah, that's probably what I'm
yeah,
thinking right now. Yeah, because I don't have a good enough knowledge of them to have any sort of
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
proper
you're
opinion,
right.
really.
But you're open about that, and that I appreciate you saying that, as opposed to people who instantly dismiss it, and you can never dismiss anything until you've got a good working knowledge of it or experience of it. But it must have been like 2 years, maybe. It just went by. I used to see these machines, have a little play on them, just like everybody did. But seemed that they were okay. They had potential. But then maybe was it 18 months ago, and I thought these machines, they cost £25,000 each. Living
Mm.
in the real world, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why the R&D that's gone into that. They've got to be useful. So I really spent some considerable time getting into them, and the more I use them, the more I thought this is fantastic. The reason they're fantastic is I'll try and do it verbally, but when I show people who've never welded before, I go on there. Well, let's do the traditional route first. You put a T-fillet in front of them and you explain the way it is you'll explain it to them. You can do you can do it verbal, you can do a PowerPoint, you show videos, do everything that you want. But at some point, that student, that learner, is going to have a go themselves. And understandably, just like me, and just like everybody else, their first one is awful. Now let's think about that. Let's think about what that would be. Traditional training is like 13 learners, usually adults, it doesn't matter, but we'll choose adults. 13 learners there. So I'm going to spend maximum now, I don't know, 90 seconds with, say you, with that demonstration, show you, encourage, and then what's going to happen then? I'm going to move on to the next person. And by the time I've worked my way around that first guy I've just been to see, he's not going to forget. He's going to forget everything I've said, and basically it's a very laborious way of going about it. But with the Vertex, that's the name of the machines. When you put that headset on and you start welding, it will give you what's termed as what's the phrase, formative feedback. So as you're going, you are seeing red, amber, green. Self-explanatory on all the variables. You don't do them all at once, but let's just say contact tip to work distance. You're too far away, it'll be red. You get closer, amber, and you got the right distance, green. That's just one. Speed of travel, and that, interestingly, having taught a lot of introduction to weldings, it's the speed of travel everybody seems to get wrong. They always seem to go really fast when they're going. Really fast. It always seems to be just the one thing people do. And again, same for that. they hone their skills repeatedly with these visual cues. I mean, I like to play my part. Obviously, that's what you're there for, but really, there's nothing that I can add that much. They've got everything in their screen in front of them, and we do that using the adult learners as an example for 2 nights. So that's good 2.5 hours one week, and then good 2.5 hours the week after that. And by the time that they get there, they get to real welding, it's remarkable to see that they've got all the teething issues out the way, all the fear factor out the way. And I know it's not real welding, but instead of going from zero to a big sparky, smoky,
Yeah, I
shiny,
suppose
of
you're always afraid of the arc to start with because, as you said,
course,
shiny and
yeah,
bright and different. But once
yeah.
you get used to it, so does it tell you, sort of things like your rod angle and that sort of thing?
Does. Does. Yes, it does. Yes, yeah. It gives you, what's I can't remember the five variables: contact to earth distance, speed of travel, yeah, angle. Yeah, it does. And it also gives you a score at the end of it as well. So that gives you then the impetus to try and beat the score, or, beat your colleagues. But it's
Yeah.
also, it's a, make it trying to sound probably posh than it is, but I often refer to it as well pool management, because everything that you do with your actions, when I said about R&D and the money that's spent into it,
Mm.
everything that you do or you do wrong is reflected there in front of you. You see it. It's just like a proper bead that you would lay down. So go on.
Okay, I suppose it gives you feedback then, and obviously you use the feedback to help you because sort of the main things I remember would be getting the rod stuck constantly for the first couple of times, or getting a lot
Yeah,
of slag traps as well. So is that something
yeah.
it picks up on as well? Yeah, would
It
it pick up on kind of the slag running in front of the pool?
It does. It does. It does. We don't
Okay,
do much stick on it. It's mainly MIG, but
mainly MIG. Okay,
yeah, the new ones do TIG as well. But absolutely, it gives you everything. As I said, the formative feedback, so which is when you, but also summative at the end, so you can actually replay your weld. You can go through it. You can turn the angle. You can watch where you went wrong, and it's just a matter of just getting rid of all those small teething problems that you would normally come into. Now, it's all right saying that, but let's just think about the time consumables that would spend. Think about the steel that would go through that you'd go through doing that. That is something, with every all the other consumables, gas, wire, electric. Now, because I'm a bit sad with statistics and data. Last summer I sat down with a former level 3 student who very kindly offered his time to come and help me, and we recreated a normal 2-hour level 3 lesson in the college. I think, well, I can't remember how many T fillets that he did, but we recreated and I monitored everything. I did a costing exercise on everything, the kilowatt hours, electricity usage, the whole shebang. And we eventually, to put a figure on it, a normal 2-hour lesson for, I think it's 15 students, cost the college £230. Okay, that's using 3 mil steel. I think it's 290 if we use 6 mil. Now, so that's £230 for one 2-hour lesson. We have 5 2-hour lessons per week. Okay, that's pretty substantial, that, isn't it? Now, on the Vertex, all you're using is just electricity, and I think it worked out something like £1.58 to run all 5 VR machines for a 2-hour lesson.
wow.
So, and,
So
and,
in
and
20 weeks, it kind of basically pays for itself then.
yeah, exactly right, exactly, yeah. But what I would add to that is a really interesting one. Is I was talking to my deputy head Dave the other day, and I said, financially, it's a wonderful saving. And I said, and he said, what about the speed of learning? And I told him, I said, well, actually, I've got data to prove actually people learn quicker this way, far quicker than they would the traditional way, for many reasons. The amount of time you'd have to stop to go and get more steel, the walk to go and get more steel. You'd chat to your mate on the way back. When this one, you press a button, you've got an instant new T fillet in front of you. Repeat, 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 repeat. And he said, even if the speed of learning was the same as traditional welding, that would be wonderful. I said, I agree. Even if it's a little bit slower, it'd still be great. But it's not. That's the point. It's quicker. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just a wonderful learning tool. But it has to be, unfortunately, just like with most things, it's new technology, isn't it? Or it's a new concept, should I say? And some people are not careful how I phrase this. Some people are not. Some people are reluctant to embrace new technology.
Okay, so would you say that is just sort of for the initial learning then? Obviously
Mm.
not to overtake. constant learning moving forward, but just initially, is that what you're saying? As opposed to using it, I don't know, a year down the line when you're trying to practice on other things, or is that still something you do?
It is. I thought that would be the case, and that is primarily what I used it for. But this does you got pipe welding, stick welding, pipe 6G. It recreates everything. So I teach level twos and threes, but we've got the brilliant welder, Alan. He's in charge of the apprentices. He gets the apps doing it as well. Really advanced stuff like overhead, PD, multi-run, and he gets them doing it with stick as well. So yes, to that extent as well.
Okay, yeah, obviously certainly would be open to, having a look and seeing what that's about. But, I still do think as well, you have to get out there and get real world,
Yeah, of
experience on the
course.
on obviously practically welding as well. But, anything that's a tool that can help speed up learning or help improve learning,
Mm,
especially
mm,
for colleges, because it can be difficult to get steel. I remember we would our college used to depend on local companies who would sort of
mm.
give them the scrap steel because they couldn't afford to just bring in steel all the time and we have to cut everything up.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd be kind of cutting
Yeah.
things up and chopping things up. People.
Yeah.
So if it can help with that side of things, great. But
Yeah.
obviously, it is important as well.
Oh, absolutely. No, couldn't agree more. At some point, you're gonna have to weld properly, obviously, but it just
Yeah,
takes all the. I'm gonna have to use the word takes all the bullshit out of the equation, all the
yeah.
hard graft of forgetting the frustration. There's a sales guy for Lincoln. I think you mentioned wanted me to mention about my relationship with Lincoln Electric. There's a sales guy from Lincoln now. Before I met him, I thought, Christ, I'm meeting a salesman here. I know what to expect. And true enough, Lewis does talk a lot, a
Sounds about
lot.
right. Yeah.
Uh, but he's the only sales guy, and I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, who really believes what he's selling. Really believes. He told me a story which I agreed completely. He said when he did his welding course, there's 15 guys on it, and he's seen usually about 20 to 30% of them leave just because there's only one welding tutor see, isn't there? There's only ever one, and you're vying for positions to try and get some snippet of advice from him or her. And a lot of people get frustrated that on welding courses. And the point he was making was this: you get your machine in front of you, you can do as much learning as you want. It's there for you. It's like having a welding tutor in your headset all the time. Never forget it, the actual real world scenario that he gave. And as I said, I remember being that frustrated student as well. But if we just add, and again, I told you I talk for ages about this, but just add one more thing. So I spoke about adults today, and they're wonderful to teach anyway. They just want to learn, especially when they've paid for the course. But the reason why it's good at getting young people, 16 to 19-year-olds into it is the elements of gamification as well. It's more on par with them. It's something, the competitive element amongst their peers as well. But it's definitely gamification for them. I've seen people who haven't wanted to even been on the engineering course and definitely not wanted to do anything to Welding, but unfortunately it was just part of the course. And I've seen them actually just become, first of all, they have a little game, try and practice with their friends, but they become interested then, they think, and they ask questions, deep questions, penetration and, everything. And then from there, when they get to real world and they start to love it then. And I've often thought, I wonder if they'd have become so engaged so quickly if it was for just the normal traditional routers, the frustration. So I think there's more to it than, probably what I've covered.
Okay, so just on that a little bit, what do you think is the best way to get young people into welding and to get people into the industry? How do we do that? Because I know, a lot of people have been thinking about that, and obviously
Mm,
everybody knows about the skill shortage in the UK and how many
mm,
jobs are coming up over the next few years. So,
mm,
what's your thoughts on
mm.
that?
I had to think about this, and whilst I do have some thoughts on it, a humorous answer to that, but as well as actually being truthful, and I'll tell you why. Two words: Adam Gold. Let me elaborate on that. The answer
Okay.
to the answer to getting young people interested in welding would be Adam Gold. Let me just tell you about that. Why I say that. Um, I know you spoke to Adam, but we needed someone to give a talk on one of our days to our students, okay, about welding. So someone in the trade, if you will. So we got good partnership with Coda Weld, really good. All the guys there, they're great. And I once met Adam at a Lincoln electric trade show. And got on well, really liked him. I've seen his videos on YouTube and I think we just got on really, really well. I liked his passion. So I contacted him and said, would you come down and just give a talk? And he did, and he arrived, and we got talking. So I think we probably wasted. We had 2 hours prep. I think we spent an hour talking about football and our football experiences. Just all football, getting on really, really well. And then he explained about how he was going to deliver his presentation. He said, "I do have a PowerPoint, but it's not about that." And I'm just standing there going through it all. He said, "I've got a pretty good idea of how young people want to be spoken to." I thought, right. So we started the talk. He was just so engaging. If I could put into one example of why he was so engaging, he'd say to the students, "Okay, I've just spoken about, I don't know, lack of penetration, whatever it is. What causes lack of penetration?" And he'd have a Coda Weld shirt in his hand. Of course, the students like tentatively put their finger up, and he'd get the shirt, and he'd, not too forcefully, launch the shirt at him, right? They'd grab it, and then he'd start talking again. Okay, great. Liam's got that one right. What about this one? What about that question? Anyone want a Coda Weld bottle? Hands up if you. He was like watching a magician at work. He was brilliant. But then, and to get to the point, was he talk about the virtues of welding, but then, as you will know, he spoke about different avenues that you can go down. It's not about being in the factory for 8 hours a day for 40 years. There's avenues, inspection, all sorts of things. And whilst his delivery was brilliant, the content is the important thing. People need to be educated, but it's not just in a factory welding. There are so many avenues if you want to do it, and that's what Adam did so well.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think the apprenticeship is kind of the building blocks of which you start on. We'll teach you sweep your bay up when you're done,
Mm.
maybe not make everybody a cup of tea, but that's probably what it would have been like a few years ago. But
Yeah.
just those things we used to do, the jobs that nobody else wanted to do around the workshop,
Mm.
cleaning things off. I remember I used to sit there and clean the flange faces off, where they used to come in with sort of cover protectors over them to stop them
Yeah.
getting damaged. Just sit there and clean those for like 2 or 3 hours, and it was horrible, but then, as you progress and you start to move into the shop and start welding, do a little bit, that gives you a base to build on then, so you can go down whatever route you want. So, you're not stuck in one place all your life. You can build on that as
Absolutely.
much as you want.
Absolutely. But it must be communicated. And I feel that's probably not something, it's nobody's fault. It's just something that I think as a trade, we've missed the trick of communicating repeatedly to these apprentices or students younger than that the avenues that are possible. Two elements really. We hear the avenues and the salaries, which Adam explained really well. Salaries that you can have and the life experience you have. But the second element was it must be communicated that it's not going to be on the plate for you. It's there,
Oh,
the
no.
whole world, but you must and you can do it.
Yeah, so my thoughts on that, I went to Australia on a working holiday visa a few years back, and never once did I have issues finding work there. As you mentioned, rates were very good. Worked. I never once had problems, and especially once you start to meet a few people who are in similar positions to you. And same here, you build up contacts and you keep in touch with people, and they phone you if there's jobs available. You have to do regional work in Australia, and I did my 88 days in welding. I was welding gates and fences. So the
Wow.
opportunity is incredible, whereas all my friends were picking fruit for almost no money. I think I was earning
Yeah.
$30 an hour, which for farm work is brilliant.
Wow.
Um, but as you said then, you have to work, you have to graft.
Yeah.
Most of my early 20s were spent working 7 days, 12 hours. You'd work as much as you could when I was saving for a deposit and everything. So things don't
Mm,
come easy, but
mm,
also,
mm,
as you briefly mentioned, if you want something enough, I honestly believe that you can achieve that if you put
mm.
enough effort into that.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
think positive and if you have a positive mindset and you go into
Yes.
something and think, I can, as you said, you've
Yes.
never really been a welding tutor before,
Mm,
but
mm.
sometimes you have those sort of career defining moments where this is your chance, you just have to take your shot.
Yes. 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 That's exactly right. And that's just exactly the sort of message, and you communicated it wonderfully there that we need to put out there. But at the moment, well, our apprenticeship team are brilliant, by the way, at the college. The two guys, Mac and Ash Histon. God, they're good. They're only a small team, but I've seen the work that they do with the apprentices, but they've got their hands full. They can't be Mr. Motivator, at the same time. So I do believe that I don't know how we can do it, but it's doable. Anything's doable, but we must. You'll probably get embarrassed me saying that, but we must do an Adam Gold. We must show them what's possible and ensure, because honestly, people forget what it's like when you're 17, 18, 19. Sometimes you're not the most confident. Sometimes
Mm.
you're not, and you don't see. It's something that only comes with age, I think. And when you're able to look back and you think, God, you really can do anything. You really can. It's not that useful when you're 46. I mean, it is, but not as useful as it would have been when you were 17. But as I said, I mean, he said inspection, he said traveller, just the things you said. But then he mentioned the salaries and he mentioned the routes of how to do it as well.
Yeah.
As is, apply yourself at college first, do that step, then the next. And if I was a student in the crowd that day, and it did work, by the way, I think there were 4 people who applied for apprenticeships, level 2 guys who applied for apprenticeships immediately after that talk. But if I was a student in the crowd that day, I would be thinking, my God, I didn't realize there was this much to welding and these opportunities, and I'd have gone for it as well.
Yeah, look, as we said, there's so much opportunity, but how exactly do the apprenticeships work then? Is that something where you guys have your college has links with local companies, or how does it work?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're very strong links with local companies. And to be fair, they do make it very clear to the students, you do your English and maths, and get, I think it's always fours, whatever they've got to get. You do your part and then come to us, or we'll come to you and we'll offer you apprenticeships. And then they do a great job explaining what an apprenticeship is about. Uh, but at the same time, they can't make students take these opportunities. And this is what harps back to being 16, 17. Sometimes it's actually a bit scary because college is safe, isn't it? A college course is safe. You've got your friends there. And even though it's a wonderful opportunity in front of you, it's actually a bit scary, isn't it? To think, you, Christ, gonna stop this nice little safe world to go out into the big wide world, work with men or women, but adults.
Yeah, I suppose college is totally different to school, whereas I never kind of, you said briefly earlier, but I never really put much effort into school. I was always in trouble. I was always never too bad, but I just say probably had too much energy, was always bouncing around everywhere. And then I kind of remember going to my college interview with Graham Benson, very, very nice guy, very, very knowledgeable welder. And I was there with my shirt and tie and my book with all my certificates in. And then I remember 2 days into the course, he's like, "You're a totally different person to this," because I was kind of running, bouncing off the walls, like turning people's lamps up. But kind of just felt like I fitted in college, and that was when, for me, within a few weeks, I knew that I wanted
Yeah,
to be a welder, or I wanted to be in the industry because I kind of felt like it was the perfect fit for me.
yeah, yeah,
You could
yeah,
kind of express yourself a little bit more. At that age, I never would have been able to sit in an office. It wouldn't have been for
yeah,
me. I was always had too much energy,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
messing
yeah.
around and joking around. But
So I wonder, being as you say that, just thinking on the fly here from what we're talking about and what we've said about how can we get people into the game, and it isn't difficult. Nothing's difficult if you get the right way of doing things. I wonder if an element there should be an element of getting people who've been through the system, such as yourself, to actually come and communicate this maybe once a year, I don't know, twice a year to not apprentices, obviously they're already on it, but I know level twos, even level ones or whatever, just to explain, as I say, like Adam Gold did, actually it's like this. And when you get there, it's like this, and so on and so forth.
yeah, of course. Well, look, if you ever want somebody to come up and speak, then certainly I would try.
Definitely,
Um, probably
definitely.
would be a bit nervous, probably would have to have a think about it, but it's definitely something I would do, be fine once I'm up and talking.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? So imagine this. Imagine a whole year of level 2 students. Imagine if they were to be put through the presentation of Adam with his magic. You explaining what it's like. You mentioned your Australia experiences. Can
Yeah,
you imagine? My
exactly.
God, I'd love to be a student listening to those sort of things. It'd really inspire you.
Because, I left school at I don't know, 17, 18 with almost no qualifications. I had level C's in maths, English, and science. But then by the age of 24, 25, I'd bought my own house. I was prepared for life, whereas didn't know what I
Mm.
wanted to do leaving school. I had absolutely no idea, didn't know where I was going, was more interested in going out on a Friday or Saturday night,
Yeah.
all dressed up,
Yes.
hair gel to one side. I was never
Yes.
interested in life, but kind
Mm,
of I just fell into welding, and that was sort of
mm,
perfect for me.
One, I'm sure you'll identify with this, but one comment that they often make to my students, I say, I've been in a factory, I've been there, in total probably working over 20 years. I said, but if I could encapsulate the older generation in it, at least in welding factories, with one phrase, it would be this. But this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about
It probably drives me insane, actually,
that?
because people will say, well, we've been doing this for 20 years,
Oh,
but I understand that you've been doing something for 20 years, but things have to progress and things have to move forward.
spot on.
If you're
Yeah.
standing still, then that's not good. But yeah, but we've always done it this way. That doesn't mean it's right, or doesn't mean it's right for this day and age, does it?
That's right.
But
That's
yeah, I've
right.
certainly worked with a few people like that through the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. And just harping back to the virtual welding, there's an element of that as well. There really is. I mean, I posted the other day. Yesterday, I think it was on someone was talking about augmented reality, and they're pretty good over it. And I said, it's speech marks. But it's not real welding, speech marks. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that. I know that. I know it's not. And I read some of the day. Is it? I think there's a new terminology for kind of a thought process people tend to have these days. It's the what if or the but. So for using VR welding, we'd be, but it's not real welding, and what if it isn't good enough, etc., etc. It is good enough. It will save your company thousands and thousands of pounds, and it's weird. Think of it. I know it's a little bit different, but think of pilots. And I know you can't throw them straight in your camera welders, but what do they do? They go on a simulation. That's what they do. They simulate and simulate and simulate until they are ready or deemed to be ready. So why should that be different? And then another one when we talk about analogies, so we use the analogy of a pilot there. There's there was a study that was done on using, I don't think it was Lincoln Electric, I can't remember, but on using augmented reality or virtual reality welding. And they used the example in it of, I think it was gallbladder surgery. I think surgeons in some country we used the two methods, using virtual reality gallbladder training or a gallbladder surgery, or they did the real thing on pigs' gallbladders. Okay. And they found, I think I'm right in saying this, they found that when it came to both sets of people then coming to actually perform surgery on pigs' gallbladders, there was the people who'd done the VR training had 20% less errors, errors as in, slip of the scalpel or whatever. And I thought, there is no difference. Be that pilot training, be that gallbladder surgery, welding. Why is welding different? It isn't. It's the same as anything, and that's why you haven't asked, but that's why only this last 6 months or so I've become a huge advocate of just virtual reality training in education. And can I tell you a quick story of what convinced me?
yeah, of course, fire away.
Great. Okay. So I've been having a go with the Quest 2, the Oculus headset. Okay. And again, forward thinking management in the engineering. My boss, he bought 5 Quests. Okay. And I was having a little play. And there was some Russian guys I've been in touch with who we call them the Dubai-based guys. They're Russians. I mean, they're evil. They're actually good guys, but they base themselves in Dubai. And I've been contacting them, and I said, "Well, what are these engineering apps you've got?" They said, "Well, why don't you just have a go for free?" And one of them, again, I'm barely, I wouldn't call myself an engineer. I don't. I've got a lot of knowledge, but this one was lockout, tag out. Okay, I was unfamiliar with that, And so I had to go on this VR app, and I got the deputy head in, and he jokes about the fact I call him a technophobe. Um,
Um,
he'd never used a headset before. Okay, so he come in and tried it on, and we did this procedure. The machine had gone down. Lock it and sign it and stuff. And he really enjoyed it, which isn't the point. It's a nice byproduct that he enjoyed it, but that doesn't mean anything. So he really enjoyed it. We had a chat, and he was amazed by it. Now this was on a Thursday. Now he came into work on a Monday morning, into our office, and he said, "Craig, if you were to ask me now how I would, how I would do the lockout tagout, I could tell you step by step by step by step." I said, I know, because I've been through it myself. I didn't even know what lockout tagout was, mate, but I know exactly what you mean. And when he said that, and he was open and honest about it, I thought, good Lord, not so disrespectful to say, oh, even someone like you, but
yeah.
he was convinced. And what I say about something similar to that, I always say the same thing, is that, so I'm not about welding now, just virtual reality environment itself is, I don't care how good a teacher you are, and everybody thinks they're the best. But all you have, unfortunately, traditionally speaking, is a PowerPoint, you, and a video, and your skills to communicate to it. That's all you have, no matter how good you are. But if you put that student in the environment in which they need to learn to do whatever task it is, they are performing that task. They're actually doing it as opposed to just theoretical. There was a quote I seen the other day. His name's Michael Wynn. He's the layperson opinion on his role. He's the head of education for Bank of America, not the one in Chester, actually in America. Okay, and his quote is something like, "You show me a 1,000-page PDF or 8 minutes in a virtual reality simulator, and I will guarantee you that whoever's in that virtual reality simulator will remember far more than that 1,000-page PDF." And I think that says it all.
Okay. Yeah. Look, obviously everybody learns in different ways, but certainly me,
Yes.
I would be more visual. Definitely would prefer sort of videos and that type of thing if I'm learning. Sometimes I can feel, as you said, reading off a PDF or reading off a book is not always ideal. I have to write everything down as well because I have an
Same
awful
here.
memory at times.
Same here.
I always carry a notebook with me because otherwise and to be fair,
Brilliant.
I lose the notebook half the time anyway, and I'm looking around for it. I've left it somewhere, left it by the coffee machine or whatever. But what's next for you then, Craig? What are you thinking? What are you aiming
um,
for next?
it, I'm very, very lucky because I don't know, and I'm not. I'm I'm curious to find out what the future holds, but I'm not necessarily looking, if you know what I mean. I'm just very content. But maybe, yeah, just maybe bringing VR into education and not just welding. And of course, obviously, getting you up to the college maybe one day so I can show you a few hours on the VR because you, I think you'd really enjoy it.
Okay, definitely something I would be interested in. So I have two more things that I plan to ask you. One was about didn't you recently get sponged in front of the college? Is that something I read about?
Do you know
Tell me a little
what?
bit about that.
Oh God! All right, yeah, yeah. Well, 2 years ago, they sent me every round robin email, say, do you know, put your name forward, to get sponged for charity. And I thought, yeah, fine,
Yeah,
fine,
it's
I'll
not going
do
to be
it.
me anyway. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
fine.
And it wasn't. I think I don't know, low down the list, which is good. Nobody wanted to sponge me. It was
Yeah.
great. So whatever happened in the last 12 months, I don't know. But they sent sent the same email again. I thought, yeah, it's not going to be me. Fine. Yeah, go on, put my name down for it. Be fine. Jesus Christ, I come top of the donations. People wanted to actively sponge me. I don't know why, but,
It must have been the
but
VR welding, was it?
I don't know. But the funny part was the day it happened was I was actually giving a presentation. I'd forgotten about it. I was actually giving a presentation on two elements. One, hydrogen awareness, which is something that we do in the college, but also how I utilize VR welding to people who had come from other colleges around the area.
Okay.
So in this classroom, it's like I wouldn't say it was serious, but I was giving this presentation, and then so I had to go from this, giving this serious presentation, this data, these statistics. So, all right, got to be someone else now. Okay, so get inside, put my head through there. Oh God, one of the guys from the other colleges came out and paid £10 to actually throw the bucket of water at me rather than just sponge,
To be fair, I
which is.
probably would have paid the £10 as well. I think it would have been worth it.
But no, thanks for that, Chris. I didn't know you knew that.
Yeah, I did. Did have a little look around before we came on the call. So the other question I've been asking each of my guests is there one funny story you can think of from your time on the tools or, in the car? Probably on the tools would be better.
But yeah, when I was welding in that factory, there was a notoriously moody, grumpy, and downright angry guy who worked on the night shift. So in the next bay to me. So our paths crossed, nothing too bad. But we didn't work next to each other, or maybe it's like if I was doing a bit of overtime, something we'd have a few words. But he was quite moody, and yeah, I think he like used to throw hammers when he got angry and stuff. He was quite a character.
Yeah.
Well, he'd if you pardon my French, he'd pissed a few people off. Okay, with
Yeah.
this hat, not me, but a few people. And I say he did the night shift, I did the days. So somebody, I was passing through the bays one day, and I seen someone, well, my mate in there. He was doing something with let's call this guy Jim, with Jim's cabinet. Where he's got all his clothes and everything. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I had enough of them." So what you need? So I'm going to weld it shut. I said, "He'll go mental." He said, "I know."
That's the point. Yeah.
That's the point. I said, "Jesus Christ. All right, I don't know anything, nothing to do with me." So I heard him, and he was doing a proper good job of it as well, little stitch welds, all the way down. He even did one underneath the bottom of the door just to
Yeah.
really, trick him. So I thought, shit, this is gonna be amazing. So I stayed on that night, stayed on. I'm doing hours overtime here, and between us, we took our curtains. I had a little cut in the curtain where I could look in. So I was welding away, and I seen the curtains ripple. I thought, can I he's here? I'd look through through the curtain. And it was lovely. It was like poetry in motion. So he'd come in, grumpy as normal, come in, put his hand on the locker, wouldn't open. He seemed to look a bit confused. Tried again, as if, as if that make any difference. Like, he started, you could see him starting to get red. I thought, oh God, what's going to happen here? Put his things down, started swearing to himself, talking to himself, and then really, really grabbed hold of that cabinet, shaking it up, down, left, and right. But he was getting really angry. He started to sweat as well. I noticed he was sweating, and then he walks away. I thought, oh, God, he's quite calm now. He walks away, and he walked into the bay, and then turned around and ran at the cabinet,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And he was like, and heel first, like tried to like drop kick it. I was thinking, mate, if there is a problem here, that ain't gonna solve it,
Probably going to be a grinder,
Oh,
which you're going to need to open it. Yeah.
well, it was brilliant, but it was brilliant because it was lovely to watch. I was like, hiding a little bit as well because he was
Yeah.
massive. He was sweating and swearing. Then he walked off, and quite rightly, and then he got the grinder, come back, put his mask on, and so you could see underneath the mask, the grinder mask, and he was swearing even when he was grinding it.
Yeah.
God, it was good. And eventually broke open. Of course, your mother said about that stitch weld on the bottom. So the
Yeah.
top
You
of the
couldn't.
cabinet was
Oh
open.
no. Yeah.
The top of the cabinet was open, the bottom wouldn't, and he got even angrier. Oh God, it was funny. I know the others were watching from somewhere, but I didn't know where. And it was great, yeah. And eventually he got the bottom up, and I just popped my head around then and said, "Everything all right, Jim?" He tried to get really serious. He started swearing in Scottish, whatever it was, and it was fantastic, really, really good. And I'd look around the corner, the other guys were pissing themselves as well.
Yeah. No, we always used to have fun like that, especially with lockers
Oh,
and everything else. So people fill your lockers up with rubbish or
oh,
come back and if you have a lock on it, they put Loctite in it so you can't open
oh,
it when you come
really?
in. It's like, yeah, there's always something, but can't blame everyone else because it was
It's
probably
always
50% me as well. Yeah, so you can't.
Yeah, yeah. It's always great when it's not you as well. But yeah, yeah. What about you, if you don't mind me asking?
Some funny
Anything?
stories. God, I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
tell.
yeah.
Yeah, I used to get up to a lot of mischief and a lot of God, I remember we screwed one of the boys' boots downs in one of the cabins before because it was always kind of battle between days and nights. That was always something,
Yeah, yeah,
whenever you come in
yeah.
on nights, days were morning. So we went upstairs and we screwed his boots in to the bottom. And as you said, we kind of waited around when he come in the morning. And I remember he storming off. I've had enough of this.
Oh
Yeah, we
God.
engineers blue was another one. We used to put engineers blue on everyone's hard hats and the welding masks, and then
Oh.
obviously just all over your forehead.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, probably don't want to admit to too much, but I suppose I can't get sacked now. It's a few
Yeah.
years later down the line, but yeah, look, it was always part of the banter. It was always part of we always had such a good laugh in college and and
Brilliant.
on site. It was always good. But yeah, Craig,
Brilliant.
thank you very much for coming on and taking the time to speak to me. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. It's been a real pleasure as well. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, definitely will come up and spend the day there at some point if that's something further down the line you're interested in. And if there's anyone listening or watching today who'd like to come on the podcast, then please, feel free to reach out because it can be difficult to get people who want to come on and speak, but everybody has a story and everybody has something else to add. And if we can just help a few people get interested or understand a little bit better, then that's a positive.
Mm. Yeah,
All
well,
right.
let me tell anyone who's listening, if you want to include this at all, you did a wonderful job. You've made me feel very relaxed, and it's been like a chat
Yeah.
with a mate.
No, well, look, that's exactly what we briefly spoke about. It's not, it's not as though we're going to come here and interview someone. We're just going to have a brief chat about the industry that, we all depend on. We depend on the industry for work, and
Mm,
we spend so much of our time in work. It's probably
mm,
like a third of our lives or wherever through the working week. So,
mm,
if we can
mm.
just help to build and improve, that's only a positive.
Good
All right.
man.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Craig. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Yeah. Nice one.